some of this in there, maybe.
Ends the program that requires asylum seekers to stay in Mexico while that process plays out. Now opening up the country to a flood of migrants. Also breaking right now, Fox News has just gotten dash cam video from Texas DPS showing a migrant being struck and killed on a highway. It's tragic. We want to warn you, this video is graphic. It's from June 10th. During a smuggling arrest, the suspect was pulled over. About half dozen illegal migrants who were in the car decided to bail out.
Sounds about like Biden's policies.
Into traffic and was hit by a car and killed. Just tragic. The smuggling suspect is now charged with his death.
Now they're going to charge this guy.
This is Outnumbered. Hello, everyone. I'm Kaylee McEnany here with my co-host, Emily Campagno. Joining us, Julie Banderas, Cassie Smedley, and
Joey Jones.
Emily, first to the court case, if we were in Mexico. This was obviously a loss for the conservative wing of Justice, a win for the Biden administration. I want to read for you a part of Justice Alito's dissent here. In the fiscal year 2021, the Border Patrol reported 1.7 million encounters with aliens along the Mexico border. When it appears that one of these aliens is not admissible, may the government simply release this alien into the country and hope that the alien will show up for a hearing in which his or her entitlement to remain will be decided.
Just hope they show
Congress has provided a clear answer. To the question, the answer is no. And then he goes to cite statute. In other words, Congress has been clear, Congress has been explicit. According to the Alito dissent, the executive must follow the legislative branch, but the majority opinion decided otherwise.
They did, and I think the other argument is that the real losers here are the American public. We've had the state and local governments around the border, as well as the entire United States. We know that the attorneys generals and governors of states as far north as Iowa and Idaho have joined the lawsuit against this, trying to enjoin the government from enforcing that original decision that did away with the Remain in Mexico policy, saying this is absolutely depleting our resources. This is a complete health and human impact on us for the negative. And for the progressives, remember, that argue, well, this actually only impacted 3,000 migrants since December. The argument is one of deterrence, that the Remain in Mexico policy, its real value in part is a deterrent, and they argue otherwise there is none. What else exists at the southern border to deter these migrants from flooding over and creating terrible situations like that loss of 53 lives in the tractor truck there, the one that ran out into traffic? These are horrible, predictable, foreseeable consequences. And by the way, on that note, the reason why the smuggler could be charged with the death of that migrant is because it's a foreseeable consequence of his original felonious activity. So I think that the disheartening quality of this decision, really, we can't underestimate it or overemphasize it for how many communities are absolutely going to be broken by this.
Yeah, and functionally, looking to what this opinion means, the administration's already rolled back Title 42, under which there have been 1.9 million migrants expelled. So Title 42 policy to essentially keep the border airtight, wiped away. Now Remain in Mexico, wiped away.
Right.
So essentially, open border is the law of the land.
Under President Trump, Title 42, Remain in Mexico, those two laws actually, in fact, stopped a lot of migrants from coming into this country. Also prevented a lot of lives from being lost. So we're talking about these 46 migrants, right, that were killed, essentially murdered because they were left in a tractor trailer, smuggled into this country. With the Remain in Mexico law now no longer, this basically means that those that are trying to come into this country that should have been waiting, even those that are seeking amnesty, should be waiting in Mexico, wait in line, wait in Mexico. It's not our problem. The Biden administration is essentially coming in and saying, come on in, you don't have to wait, you just come right on in, right through the front door, and they are responsible for the deaths of these 46 migrants. And I believe that Greg Abbott,
53 now.
Yeah, then originally 46, now 53 of these people who basically feel that there is an open border policy in this country. So they have an open invitation. And this administration is 100% responsible. The fact that Kamala Harris, in fact, attacked Abbott for saying that he turned quickly to politics, this is all about politics. This is failed politics, and the blood of those migrants' hands are on the Biden administration. As far as
Joe Biden's
Kamala, to your point, she says Governor Abbott went to politics.
Yes.
And that was just before she literally went to politics. Watch this.
How the governor of that state responded really highlights part of the problem. Because his response, where there are 50 dead bodies in his state, is to go straight to politics instead of dealing with the realities of the issue.
Fox News alert. The newest Justice, Ketanji Brown Jackson, is about to be officially sworn in. Jackson replaces retiring Associate Justice Stephen Breyer. Chief Justice John Roberts is administering the constitutional oath, and her debut is historic, as Justice Jackson is now the first Black woman to serve on the Supreme Court. Plus, with her addition, the High Court has 4 women on it for the first time ever. Let's watch.
Me. I, Ketanji Brown Jackson, do solemnly swear.
I, Ketanji Brown Jackson, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you very much. And now I'll turn things over to Justice Breyer.
The judicial oath, will you raise your right hand, please? Thank you. I, Ketanji Brown Jackson.
I, Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
That I will administer justice.
That I will administer justice.
Without respect to persons.
Without respect to persons.
And do equal right.
And do equal right.
To the poor and to the rich.
To the poor and to the rich.
And that I will faithfully and impartially.
And that I will faithfully and impartially.
Discharge and perform.
Discharge and perform.
All the duties.
All the duties.
Incumbent upon me.
Incumbent upon me.
As an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States.
As an Associate Supreme Court of the United States.
Under the Constitution.
Under the Constitution.
And laws of the United States.
And laws of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Now, all the members of the court, I am pleased to welcome Justice Jackson to the court and to our common calling.
I mean, congrats, but this guy is still staring at her. What is wrong with this guy? You're fucking bum.
So you just watched Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. She took the judicial oath from Justice Stephen Breyer, who is retired. Significant. She was his clerk, and now she replaces him as the 104th Associate Justice on the Supreme Court of the United States. Joey, going back to our discussion, I want to replay that soundbite from the Vice President. Let's listen to what she had to say.
How the governor of that state responded really highlights part of the problem. Because his response, where there are 50 dead bodies in his state, is to go straight to politics. Well, instead of dealing with the realities of the issue.
About it, unlike you.
Okay, so it's the former administration's issue, except...
I gotta pause it and say, I mean, at least Abbott is doing something. You know, sending them up to D.C. on the buses was a great idea. I love it. See more of it.
We brought some numbers for you. Joey, just take a look really quick at this. This is May 2022 encounters at the southern border, 239,416. Go back to May 2020. That's, of course, the last May President Trump was president, 23,000. In other words, that is a 930% increase, 216,000 more encounters on the southern border this May than last. So I'm not sure what she means.
The realities of the issue. I saw my child showing up. I grew up in Dalton, Georgia. The carpet we're sitting on right now was made in Dalton, Georgia. I put a check on it. I promise you, all carpets made there. You know who makes that carpet? Immigrants. This country doesn't make it without import labor. That's just part of who we are. It's a part of our fabric. When you come here illegally, you live in the shadows. You live 2 or 3 families to a home. A lot of times you'll have single men come here and they'll send the majority of their money back to Mexico to support a family. They come here, they get lonely, they start a new family.
Oh, that's
It's not fun to live here in the shadows, to live in a way that Your home is in Mexico. You can't go back and forth because you might get caught. So you live here. You don't have most of what's afforded to Americans as far as freedom and rights go unless you do so illegally. And then there's no guarantee behind it. The best benefit you get is you can go to the local health department for health benefits. That's about it. It's not fun to be here illegally. And what's happened is children of those people who have come here illegally and started families once they got here, those children are American citizens, and they've come of age now, and they can vote now, and they look at what their mom and dad went through, and they said, you know what? That is a ridiculous way to be a part of this country. That is not the way this should happen. And they're voting for Republicans who are promising to do something about it. So when the Supreme Court hands this back to the administration, when the Supreme Court gives the ambiguity of immigration law to an executive branch that could change every 4 years, what that really means is the American people need to put a lot of pressure on Congress to codify immigration reform and fix what we have broken.
Cassie, and we heard it all the time from Democrats. They like to paint themselves as the great humanitarian party when it comes to illegal immigrants. That is their message.
Well said, Joey. Joey always says it best.
And heat in the back of eventually, as the individual who's the perpetrator of that was very high on meth. It's not compassionate when little girls are in facilities and don't even have a place to use the restroom and are on suicide watch list.
Yes, the one word that keeps running through my mind as we watch this, as you all have spoken, is inhumane. Mm-hmm. And this administration's policy or lack thereof towards immigration and towards open borders, it's inhumane. It's not fair, to your point, for the people coming over our country illegally. It's not fair for those living in border communities who have just been ravaged by all of the crime and just floods of people coming over. It's inhumane. And there's a lot of compassion for people who are trying to escape a life that we can't even imagine. But let's work on the policies. I think that's what we've learned from all of these Supreme Court decisions over the last couple of weeks is they're saying, hey, Congress, do your job. Hey, legislators, do your job. Don't rely on the Supreme Court to do your job for you. And as voters, we should be very in tune with that as well, of who we're electing and the job that they're going to do. But what we have right now is an inhumane open border policy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Joe Biden, the open border president, make no mistake, just ahead for President Biden. A new Associated Press survey showing Democrats and Republicans can agree on something. America is headed in the wrong direction under President Biden. 85% of voters say the country is on the wrong track. That includes more than 90% of Republicans. And get this, almost 80% of Democrats. Biden's job approval now sinking to an all-time low, the Real Clear Politics average, putting his approval at just 38%. This as the president sets his sights on a second term. The report is saying that Biden is still trying to sell his own party on the idea. The headline reads this from NBC. Biden pitches Democrats on Biden for president in 2024. Cassie, you read, I'm sure, behind the headlines like I do, like where the leak's coming from?
Biden 2024. Next joke, please.
We don't want him, we don't want him. There's one Washington Post headline, Biden's running, clearly probably planted by the DNC or White House or someone. And then now you have him trying to court Democrats at a time when Democrats are souring on him.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you have Democrats. It's almost become part of their DNC talking points to say, I will not campaign with Biden. I'm the candidate. And they're like holding this as a badge of honor that I'm separate from him, which doesn't speak good of how popular or unpopular he is for their party. But I would just note, everybody take a look at the Democrats' voting records because they vote with him like 95 to 100% of the time. So even he's unpopular. You're trying to distance yourself to do anything to save your own hind in your own election, and yet you keep voting with him. But I do think it's interesting too that Democrats are like, we'd be fine with somebody else. But who's the somebody else? Because nobody else is popular.
No, and you wonder what a midterm shellacking is going to do to that calculus. I imagine the cries to get him out are going to be louder, Julie.
Yes.
Key to maintaining your hold on the party, as Cassie's suggesting, is being popular among voters. And he has like 70% approval among Democrats.
So I've never run for office, but let's say I'm a Democrat and I'm running, so I would want Democrats to vote for me, right? Is that how it works?
Fair enough.
So in this poll, nearly 8 out of 10 Democrats are now not.
Well, they always have this sort of ass backwards thinking, and it never gets them anywhere besides in the toilet. So just remember that.
fundamental challenge when it comes to the midterms in November. And as far as those Democrats that say that there's no red wave coming, look at your partners, look at your colleagues, look at your friends, because they are the ones that are turning their back on the president. And why? Because of the economy. It's the number one reason why Democrats are turning their back on this president. The economy and gas prices, which, by the way, this administration has basically hinted to the fact that, complaining, it's not that bad, even though in some places it's nearing, $7, $8 in California. So yeah, Democrats are not going to, and the economy's not going to get any better, by the way. Come November, it's only going to get worse. So that means I think that Republicans have it.
Yes, well, check out this fancy political footwork from the vice president. Here's what she said on 2024.
Really? I'm waiting on
Joe Biden is running for re-election, and I will be his ticket mate.
Run that.
Full stop. Full stop. That's it.
It's running mate, but she used ticket mate a second time. She emailed reporters, Emily, saying this: the president intends to run, and if he does, I will be his ticket mate. We will run together. Now, a spokesperson reached out on background and said, "Oh, she's just saying that to avoid FEC."
I mean, Nick, what do you think about Biden and Kamala Harris for 2024? It's not going to work. It's never going to work. The fucking clown.
Original articulation on her part in the beginning. Who should be surprised by that? And going back to your point about the economy as well, I think, oftentimes people refer to it as sort of single issue candidates or single issue voting records. But here, to me, it's fundamental. And what's so interesting about, as we discuss every day, the plummeting approval rates for the president, part of the reason why they're plummeting is being driven by the skyrocketing disapproval rates coming out of the Democrats. So just 1 year ago, 37% of Democrats described the national economy, for example, as poor. But just in 1 year, now 67% of them say that the national economy is poor. And this is in addition to 8 out of 10 saying that the national economy is in poor condition, and they disapprove of Biden's handling of it. Remember, this is the single most important fundamental issue. It's hand in hand with inflation and economy. So I think while they continue to vote with him, perhaps on certain policies in general, come midterms and come 2024, it's going to be a different story.
And add immigration to that as well.
Absolutely. Joey, we do have that 51% of the economy was about a year ago. Now it's 28%. As I say, it's the economy, stupid. It's not Roe v. Wade and Dobbs.
If that was fancy political footwork, I've got some legs you can borrow because you can all over yourself on that one. Listen, it's not all that difficult. When you look at President Biden, Americans sit here, our money's worth less, things cost more, all right? The border's broke, can't fix it. The military can't get anyone to serve anymore. Congress is in complete disarray. We have hearings over January 6th while we're trying to figure out how we're going to pay for things. It seems like their eyes are all on the wrong ball or something of that speak. I think it's a little bit disingenuous, but also politically advantageous for Democrats to blame President Biden for the state of things, because the state of things are a result of a perceived moderate fully embracing the Democrats' mainstream progressive views. I mean, President Biden gets into office, the first thing he does is attack the energy sector. Where he is on Roe versus Wade today compared to what's for most of his political career, he has fully embraced the progressive agenda. The one place where President Biden has shined his incompetence is responding to crisis. You talk about Afghanistan, Ukraine, the border, everything from baby formula to inflation and energy. He has, on top of their policy, shown an inability to lead effectively, to see anything coming. I mean, he can simultaneously tell us that all of our intelligence community knew almost to the date when Ukraine was going to be invaded, but seemed to respond in a way that he's caught completely off guard.
Yeah.
And it's that way through all of these crises. The baby formula is the same thing.
They're self-made, like Afghanistan. The general's warning, don't get out, but he got out. He's very stubborn, which means he is going to run in 2024. Mark my word, he's a stubborn guy. Coming up, a 20-year-old mom
was pushing her 3-month-old baby in a stroller when a man dressed in black walked up and shot her in the head at close range, killing her right there. Children were playing at the nearby park, heard the shots. One witnessing the young woman fall to the ground. A manhunt for the gunman is now underway. We're told the baby is unharmed. The mother of the young woman told Fox News Digital she believes the suspect is the child's father and said the city was supposed to protect her daughter after she alerted authorities over alleged domestic violence. Julie.
Okay, so I just was speaking with a high-level NYPD source who tells me basically this is not only a domestic violence case, the mother has an absolute point here. She should have been protected. This domestic violence case was actually opened back in January. We are now almost in July. And this is the reason why these murders are happening in our city. This happened at about 8:30 p.m. at night. This could have happened broad daylight, quite frankly, because the police officers here have no control, and they are not being given the power in order to follow up on domestic violence cases, because these guys, even if he were to be arrested, he'd be released within 24 hours and able to be free to reoffend. Here's a quote from my high-level source here. I have no doubt, this is a reminder of where this city is going, with no help from politicians and officers leaving in droves. There is no end in sight. So the NYPD themselves are saying, we know it's bad, we think it's going to get worse. And why? Because politicians. We've got a new mayor who finally did step foot in the subway, and he himself said he was shocked at how bad it was. He's been in office for how many months, and he just figured that out? So obviously there hasn't been any pre-planning to hunker down on the issue, and it's only going to get worse before it gets better, is what NYPD are telling me, which is not a good feeling if you're a New Yorker.
We've been reporting on double-digit resignation NYPD detectives throughout the ranks.
No backing. There was no backing. The NYPD are literally retiring early and taking their pensions early and moving to Florida. I know so many of them with families and young children, because you know what? They were stationed in the Bronx. I know 3 off the top of my head that worked with Harbor Patrol and in the Bronx, and they were located in Harlem in these precincts where they were getting shot at or attacked, and they couldn't even fight back. So they are retiring because there is no backing for NYPD or for police in law enforcement in the city whatsoever.
Right, as well as resignations by assistant district attorneys here who are sick of this.
If she would have had
Murphy
that
beds for home renovation? Why not? Get more space for the small urban condo.
I'm sure that fucking nigger just waited for her to pass and then came
crept up on her and then just fucking pulled up.
That's how niggers
in cities throughout the country. That's why Americans, in addition to inflation and economy, place public safety as a top priority and are confused by city council decisions, for example, in Los Angeles, that are still voting to defund the police, defund sheriff's offices, despite triple-digit their increase in crimes.
Well, you're talking about the city of West Hollywood. A 264% increase in crime, and their council just voted to take money away from police officers and spend it on things like a Russian arts festival, and I believe making the crosswalks more LGBTQ friendly, whatever that means. I'm not sure. I don't know how it makes your city safer. LA County's in complete disarray. I've hosted Fox and Friends First all weekend. We've had 3 or 4 guests throughout the week, actually, from Buckhead, Atlanta, LA County, Los Angeles, Chicago, and almost every one of them, just before we bring them on, there's a new story of a new murder or a new crime that's happened in their city that we're adjusting to talk about, that gives full evidence right away. You see on social media, cops in Chicago can't chase, so people are mocking the cops. They're running away from them and holding up a cell phone saying, you can't chase, you can't chase. The 2 cops that were murdered in LA,
you can't chase me.
All right, the young man that murdered them had not seen his parole officer in 6 months. The root of this problem is that through COVID, they've completely disconnected the physical check-ins on their parole officers. So when we talk about this woke policy,
the real problem is that they chose to be police officers in that shitty city.
Those vulnerable communities, the Black and brown populations and minority populations, that this administration and the progressive left purport to want to protect. The irony as well, similar to a parallel with the southern border where compassion becomes cruel. Remember we reported on the guy here that was the serial shoplifter. He was also an assaulter, and he'd been arrested over 40 times. Finally, he was put in jail, and he said, quote, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. He said, finally, I am sober, in stark contrast to those progressives speaking for him and saying, oh, no, bail reform is what is important. Meanwhile, the community is devastated, and this poor man almost died because of his addiction. Now he's sober, and he's saying, thank you for putting me in jail.
It's a really interesting development, Emily, and a follow-up on that. Mayor Eric Adams, his response to this, his responses just get more and more tone deaf to me. He said in this one, when a mother's pushing a baby carriage down the block and is shot at point-blank range, this shows just how this national problem is impacting families. Using the word national problem was intentional because that somehow suggests this is not a New York City phenomenon. This is national. Well, FoxNews.com did an article about 6 cities that are on pace for their 2022 violent crime numbers to outpace 2021. Those cities, I don't know if you can find a commonality here. Baltimore, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, New York City. Democrat-run cities. No, it's not a national problem. This is a Democrat problem and a lawlessness problem, as Julie noted.
Yeah. And Cassie, yet Democrats still refuse to acknowledge the public safety component that voters want and need. Instead, they say it's a messaging problem. They refuse to admit a red wave is coming, has already started coming, and the reason why behind it, primarily because
still asks his mom to give him
first of all, hats off to these men and women in uniform who keep showing up for work, knowing that they're not supported but believe in this bigger cause and charge. Thank you for doing your job. But yes, the red wave is coming, and you see, and not even in red states like San Francisco, where they're recalling their DAs and stuff, because they're saying we have that power, so we're either going to vote you out of office, or we're going to move ourselves out of your cities, and then good luck to you when you lose all the law-abiding citizens in your cities. That's right. All right, moving forward, gun rights advocates are condemning California's Attorney General for releasing the names and addresses of 200,000 concealed carry permit holders in the state. We will discuss this major breach of privacy next. Attorney General is investigating a data breach that exposed the personal information of hundreds of thousands of people who have applied for a concealed carry permit within the last 10 years. The state's Justice Department says the breach happened just hours after the agency updated the firearm dashboard portal with new data. State AG Rob Bonta said the move would improve transparency and trust, but instead, it leaked personal information found on people's safety certificates, gun sale records, and more. Johnny Joey Jones. It included specifically the full name, the date of birth, the home address, and the race of all of these hundreds of thousands of people. And the reload reportedly found that in the LA County database, around 420 were reserve officers and 244 judges were among those who had their information leaked.
Yeah, just think about that. Think about what happened, just a couple of weeks ago with Supreme Court Justice. And so you tell me we don't have a generation of weak men and that are looking to have power or have an influence. They go, we want to go assassinate Supreme Court Justice. So you think there aren't people out there who have this mindset that will use this information negatively? It really, if you want to know why we can't have universal background checks, this is why we can't have universal background checks. Universal background checks on its merit is not a terrible idea. But the risk of how it would put people in jeopardy and create a class of citizen that the government can go after at will, this is exactly why that's a bad idea. This is why most new gun legislation is completely untrusted. The Senate just passed a bill. I don't know where it is in the House or on the desk. I've been working this week. I haven't checked in. The Senate just passed legislation that was gun legislation. And it was probably about as weak of gun legislation as you could see for two reasons. One, because the American people doesn't support it. They don't trust the government to take more rights away. And two, they know that's not the answer. They know gun legislation isn't the answer to the problems we have. When states like California do a leak like this, I believe it's 100% on purpose, and it continues to deteriorate the trust between Americans that want to partake in the rights like the Second Amendment and a government that's adversarial towards them.
And let's give the benefit of the doubt for a second, Kaylee, in case it wasn't purposeful. That being said, legally, there's an amount of negligence that rises to a level of criminal culpability regardless of intent. And if something happens to one of those people, especially if it's a judge or a law enforcement officer, then that, I believe, they will absolutely be held criminally liable. In fact, I think they should be criminally prosecuted now, because that level of negligence is absolutely unacceptable, regardless of the incompetence that seems to continue emanating from that office. Totally unacceptable. I mean, how does this happen? And by the way, 7 days after the New York case was decided by the Supreme Court, 7 days? I'm sorry, the timing seems a bit suspect. Yeah. Agree, we don't know. This could have been accidental. Negligence, as you said. Timing is crazy. Gavin Newsom said this portal was created, he said this earlier in the year, to improve transparency and information sharing for firearms-related data. It seems like a doxing portal, if nothing else, because how does data just spill accidentally onto the internet? It takes huge steps for that to happen.
That's right. And Cassie, doesn't this underscore, too, if there's one thing you can rely on from the government, it's actually incompetence. It's actually the blundering fumblingness of an overblown, bloated, bureaucratic institution, especially, again, coming out of California and Gavin Newsom's administration there. Why then do people keep arguing they're the answer to our problems? To me, they are the absolute cause of all of our problems. And if there's anyone I trust to protect my personal information, not the California government.
That's right. It's Ronald Reagan line. I'm from the government and I'm here to help. And everybody laughs, always gets a good laugh because no one believes it, because we've seen time and again how the government has done us wrong. And broaden this out. Maybe you're not a gun owner, but how many other issues that the government can decide we disagree with you on that, and so we're going to dox you. That's been a real concern. We've seen that in Virginia with these parents who have gone to their school board meetings. And I think that's what clear for all of us for saying what's next. And I'm with you. I don't think this was an accident.
Yeah. There's a gun rights group that's basically firing back and calling for the California's AG to resign. I believe that if these leaks in fact did happen, absolutely he should resign. Yeah. And Joey, I thought it was interesting. You mentioned something in the break about how those who actually hold gun licenses and they are licensed to carry actually carry out less crime. I want you to share what you were
absolutely. So the amount of work it takes to get a permit to carry in a place like New York or California, those aren't the people committing gun crime.
Right.
They're the ones that are willfully submitting their personal information, showing that they have training. They are doing their due diligence. They're law-abiding citizens. No state should have any fear of someone going through hurdles to carry a gun for their safety becoming the criminal. It just doesn't happen. The data doesn't show that it happens. Yeah. People who are willing to commit crimes are willing to do it with a gun illegally. Exactly. That makes sense.
Yeah. And these are the same people that are advocating for genetic privacy, right? That reduced the cold case homicide solution rate by 3 million down to 30,000 or whatever it was. But of course, the second you're a law enforcement officer or a judge or a card carrier, exactly. Okay. Coming up, a school board member in California is now calling for a boycott of the July 4th holiday of Independence Day.
What? You got me.
Cancel July 4th.
Cancel it. Canceling July 4th because it's racist. That's unfucking believable.